Welcome to another explainer. Today, we are diving deep into something that literally feeds the world, the humble yet incredibly versatile potato. Now, right out of the gate, I want to talk about a massive mistake I see beginners make all the time. They look at a calendar on the wall, they see it's a specific date in spring, and they just start throwing seeds in the ground. But look, agriculture isn't about arbitrary calendar dates. It's a precise science driven by biology, climate, and soil conditions. So today, we're going to break down the exact research-backed science of planting potatoes so you can maximize your yield and grow like an absolute pro. So I've got to ask you, when exactly should you plant your potatoes? Are you looking at a calendar or are you looking at a thermometer? If you want to be successful, you really have to throw out the calendar. The absolute golden rule of potato planting is that the temperature of your soil is your ultimate indicator. We don't plant just because it happens to be March or April. We plant when the earth actually tells us it's physically ready to support new life. Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We're covering timing and conditions, varieties and sprouting, soil prep and fertilizing, planting depth and schemes, care and watering, and finally, harvest and summary. Let's jump right in. Okay, section 1. Timing and planting conditions. Let's figure out exactly when to get those seeds in the ground. The absolutely crucial takeaway here is this exact number, 7 to 10 degrees Celsius. But hold on, that's not the air temperature. You need to measure this at a depth of 10 centimeters down inside the soil. This specific temperature is the absolute biological minimum required for your potatoes to wake up and begin growing. If you get impatient and plant your seeds in soil that is colder than this, all their physiological processes are just completely blocked. The seed basically sits there, shivering in the cold, wet dirt, which creates the perfect anaerobic conditions for the mother tuber to rot away before it even gets a chance to sprout. To put that into perspective, just look at regional data, like here in Bulgaria. We can see how drastically planting windows shift based entirely on that soil temperature rule. Down in the warmer south, they hit that 7 to 10 degree mark as early as late February. Up north, that shifts to late March. And in the mountains, you might literally be waiting until mid-May. But look at that last row, summer planting. Doing a second crop in June or July is actually a brilliant agronomic strategy. It allows the tubers to form during the cooler autumn months, totally avoiding the extreme heat stress of summer. This actually prevents the seed from genetically degenerating over time. Pretty amazing, right? Moving on to section 2, preparation. We'll be looking at varieties and the sprouting process. So obviously, before anything else, you want to make sure you've selected the right early, mid, or late season variety for your specific climate and what you actually want to use them for in the kitchen. But once you have those seeds, we use a vital agronomic technique called sprouting. This is a highly recommended 40-day prep process where you intentionally awaken and harden your potato seeds before they ever touch the earth. Why do we bother doing this? Because it accelerates the emergence of the plant by 8 to 10 days. That minimizes the time the tuber sits completely vulnerable in that cold, damp spring soil. Even better, it activates more eyes on the potato, meaning more stems, and ultimately it can boost your total yield by an incredible 20 to 25%. That is a game changer. Now, the sprouting process itself happens in 2 really fascinating phases. Step 1 is the awakening. You place the tubers in complete darkness at a nice, warm 15 to 18 degrees Celsius for about 8 to 10 days. This triggers simultaneous eye growth. Then comes step 2, which is hardening. You suddenly drop the temperature down to 8 to 12 degrees and introduce bright, diffuse light for 20 to 25 days. That shock of light and cold stops the sprouts from getting all pale and leggy. Instead, they grow thick, robust, dark green or violet, and incredibly resilient. They anchor so tightly to the potato that they won't just snap off when you're planting them. All right, section 3, soil preparation and fertilizing. Let's talk about creating the perfect underground environment. Potatoes are surprisingly demanding when it comes to their soil structure and nutrients. They really prefer a slightly acidic pH, right around that 5.5 to 6.5 sweet spot. Your physical prep actually needs to start in the autumn with a deep plow down to 25 or 30 centimeters. Then, right before you plant in the spring, you have to plow again, but shallower at 18 to 20 centimeters without mold boards. If you skip this spring plow and just do a shallow cultivation, you're literally costing yourself about 8% of your yield. Why? Because the soil gets compacted, reducing aeration and creating physical resistance that the growing potatoes have to fight against. On the nutrition side, they need a balanced NPK feed that's about 30 kilos of nitrogen for the leafy tops and 25 kilos of phosphorus and 28 to 30 kilos of potassium per decar to actually build those tubers. And right here is a major pitfall you must watch out for when you're buying fertilizer. When you are supplying potassium, you should highly prefer potassium sulfate or specialized NPK complexes. You must absolutely, at all costs, avoid potassium chloride. Potatoes completely hate chlorine. It actively suppresses starch synthesis in the plant. So if you use it, you will completely ruin the culinary quality and texture of your potatoes. They won't mash right, they won't fry right, they'll basically be ruined for the kitchen. Okay, section 4, planting schemes and depth. Let's look at the actual spatial architecture of your crop. Let's demystify the math of planting. This is all based on your end goals, assuming you're using standard 35 to 55 millimeter seeds. If your goal is early production, getting potatoes to the market or your dinner table as fast as humanly possible, you plant densely. You want about 20 to 30 centimeters between seeds. But if you're growing mid to late season potatoes meant for long-term winter storage, you need to give them room to grow massive. You'll space the rows out to 75 centimeters and put 30 to 35 centimeters between each seed. Now, if your specific goal is just to grow potatoes to harvest seeds for next year, you actually increase the planting density by 20 to 25%. That crowds them a bit and forces the plant to make a much larger number of medium-sized tubers. Aside from the spacing, how deep you plant is heavily dictated by your soil type. Here is a highly actionable rule of thumb for you. If you have heavy, wet, clay-like soil, you must plant shallowly, around 6 to 8 centimeters deep. If you plant too deep in clay, the tubers will literally suffocate. However, if you're working with light, well-draining, sandy soil, you want to plant deeply, down to 10 or 15 centimeters. This ensures the roots can reach far down and secure that vital moisture, which tends to drain away really quickly from the sandy surface. All right, moving to section 5, care, hoeing, and watering. This is where we maintain all that hard work. When it comes to maintenance, timing is everything. About 14 to 21 days in, when your plants are roughly 7 to 10 centimeters tall, you do your first hoeing. This breaks up that hard soil crust and floods the root zone with fresh oxygen. The truly critical step, though, is the second hoeing, done right before the plant flowers, when it's about 20 to 25 centimeters tall. This is when you earth up the plant. You're pulling loose soil from the rows directly around the base of the stems. This does two things. It creates space for the new tubers to expand, and it covers them so the sun doesn't hit them, which would turn them green and toxic. Just a quick warning, though, don't earth up too high. If you do, you'll disrupt the root system's delicate temperature balance. You also absolutely must keep those roots hydrated. Potatoes have massive water requirements. We're talking 600 to 650 cubic meters of water per decker annually. They are incredibly sensitive to water deficits, especially during the flowering and tuber formation stages. If you hit a dry summer, irrigation is just non-negotiable if you want a surviving crop. Drip irrigation is by far the most efficient way to maintain that target 70 to 80% soil moisture. And hey, while you're out there checking the water lines, you need to strictly monitor the leaves for the dreaded potato blight and the devastating Colorado beetle. As a great organic prevention measure, you can introduce beneficial insects or apply neem oil early in the season to stop infestations before they even have a chance to start. Finally, section 6, successful harvest and summary. This is the payoff. But before we dig them up, I want to share a really fascinating agronomic insight about seed health. Remember that summer planting strategy we touched on earlier? Well, when tubers form and mature in hot summer soil, their internal biological clock speeds up. Physiological aging occurs really quickly, which means by winter, they already want to start sprouting. But by planting late in the summer, the tubers mature in the cool autumn earth. This creates physiologically younger, much healthier seeds that will survive winter storage perfectly and practically guarantee a massive, vigorous crop for your next year. It really is the ultimate professional secret. So how do you actually know it's time to harvest? You'll know it's time when the plant's aerial parts, the leaves and the stems, turn completely yellow and dry out. Now, when you are digging them up, you must be extremely gentle. I mean it, treat them like eggs. A single mechanical bruise from a shovel or even just dropping them too hard can lead to rapid rot once they're sitting in the cellar. Once they are cured, you need to store them in complete pitch black darkness to prevent them from turning green. Keep the temperature strictly between 2 and 5 degrees Celsius, and that will keep them completely asleep and perfectly fresh for months. And there you have it, folks, the complete science-backed journey of planting, growing, and harvesting potatoes. No more just guessing with the wall calendar. We are using pure, proven agronomy. I really encourage you to take these insights, get a thermometer to check those soil temperatures, and start planting with absolute confidence. As a final note, please keep in mind, the information provided in this explainer is for educational purposes only. Always consider specific local conditions and consult with agricultural experts when necessary. Now that you're armed with the hidden science beneath the soil, I have to ask, What old gardening myths are you going to break this season to engineer your biggest harvest yet? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and happy planting.